Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for the February Hacks Roundup. My name is Zishan and I work as an auditor at Quantstamp. Today, we'll be covering the 5 largest smart contract hacks in February. We'll also summarize some of the smaller hacks which happened in February, and finally, we'll analyze some of the trends we see in these hacks. Now, February saw about 35 million lost due to smart contract hacks. This is 10 times lower than February of the previous year. However, it's still a sharp rise from January of 2023, which only saw about 8.8 million lost. Now, the majority of losses in February were from the DeFi sector, and this came in at around 30 million. Now, I should mention that in March, we've already seen over 200 million lost due to smart contract hacks, so you can expect this number to rise significantly for March. The first hack we're going to talk about happened on the Bonq protocol. Now, as you can see here, Bonq's TVL at the beginning of February was approximately 13 million. However, shortly after the hack, you can see that the TVL has dropped almost to zero. Now, Bonq is a lending protocol which features the Bonq Euro stablecoin. As the name implies, the Bonq Euro stablecoin is pegged to the euro. The way Bonq works is that users deposit collateral assets into the protocol, and then they are able to take a loan out by minting Bonq Euros. Now, one of the primary use cases that the Bonq protocol was targeting was to provide a way for projects to take loans out against their very own protocol tokens. One such example was the Alliance Block project. And the Alliance Block project had their very own token called the Wrapped Alliance Block token or Alliance Block token. That's this WALBT over here. Now, on February 1st, the Bonq protocol was exploited, and this exploit saw about $11 million worth of Alliance Block tokens stolen from the protocol. We also saw about 98 million Bonq Euro tokens minted wrongfully to the hacker. Now, because both of these tokens, the Alliance Block token as well as the Bonq Euro token, had low liquidity, the hacker's actual profit from this hack was only about 1.7 million. To explain how the Bonq hack happened, we first need to describe Teller. Now, Teller is a decentralized Oracle protocol that uses an optimistic system. This means that anyone can report data to Teller simply by staking 10 TRB tokens. TRB is Teller's protocol token, and the long name for this is the Teller Tribute token. Now, while anyone can report data, anyone can also dispute data. And the consequence of a successful dispute is that the stake of the original reporter is going to be slashed. This means that the original reporter will lose their 10 TRB tokens, and part of this 10 TRB will be sent to the disputer as a reward for successfully disputing an invalid price. Now, one of the most famous use cases for Teller is that it is used by Liquidity as a fallback oracle. Now, Liquidity is one of the largest DeFi protocols and has around 700 million in TVL at this time. When using prices from Teller, it is essential that we use a price that has had sufficient time to be disputed. And this is because anyone can report a price, and anyone can also report a wrong price. And so because of this, we need to give the disputers sufficient opportunity to dispute an invalid price. And this is why we can't use a price which has been reported in the same block or the same transaction, since no one has had an opportunity to dispute that price. And unfortunately, this is exactly what happened in this exploit. Now, the root cause of the Bonq exploit was that the Bonq protocol was reading the latest price from the Teller price feed. And normally, a price should be read which has had sufficient time to be disputed by various actors in the system. So how did the attacker take advantage of this? Well, the attacker used an attack contract to execute the hack. And let's suppose that this attack contract has deposited a small amount of collateral in the form of Alliance Block token into Bonq. So the attack contract now has a small amount of collateral, but they want to take a massive loan out from Bonq. So how do they do this? So the first step the attack contract takes here is to report a very high price here to Teller. And the next step here is that the attack contract is going to take out going to attempt to take out a massive loan from Bonq. At this point, Bonk has to decide whether to give out this loan to the attack contract. In order to do that, Bonk has to know the total collateral value of the attack contract. And the only collateral that the attack contract has is that small amount of Alliance block token. And what Bonk is going to do in order to figure out what the total value is, it's going to read the price from Teller. In fact, it's going to read the latest reported price from Teller. And this price that it's reading has actually been reported by the attacker. And as we mentioned, this is a very high price, which was reported by the attacker. So now Bonk thinks that the small amount of Alliance block token is actually enormously valuable. And so it allows the attack contract to take out this massive loan from Bonk and essentially allows the attacker to extract value. And this is what was taken advantage of by the attacker in order to execute this exploit. This is a sample teller price feed we have here, and you can see that 30 minutes ago, a valid price was reported, and this was not disputed by anyone because it's actually a correct price. Then 15 minutes ago, another price was reported, which was incorrect, and this price was disputed because actors are incentivized to dispute invalid prices. However, this last price here that was reported by the attacker in the same transaction as the hack has had no opportunity to be disputed, despite the fact that it is a wrong price. And so this is why Bonk was able to read this price from Teller. The hack itself actually happened in two transactions. And so the first transaction is very similar to what we just described. And but the first step of the first hack transaction was that the attacker submitted a very high price for the Alliance block token to Teller. Then the attacker creates a trove in Bonk, and they transfer a small amount of Alliance block token to this trove. So trove is sort of like a vault. And this small amount of Alliance block token they've transferred is going to be used as collateral. The third step here is that the attacker takes out a massive loan from Bonk of 100 million Bonk Euro tokens. And they're able to do this because Bonk thinks that the small amount of Alliance block token is extremely valuable due to the high price reported here by the attacker. So by the end of this first hack transaction, the attacker has accumulated a massive amount of Bonk Euro tokens. Now in the second hack transaction, the attacker is going to steal all the Alliance block token collateral for users of the Bonk protocol. And this second transaction is almost the opposite of the first one. The first step of the second hack transaction is that the attacker is going to submit a very low price for the Alliance block token to Teller. And the effect of this is that Bonk now thinks that many of the troves within the protocol are under-collateralized because these troves are collateralized by the Alliance block token. And now Bonk believes that the Alliance block token is worth very little because of this low price reported by the attacker. And so Bonk is going to allow the liquidation of all these troves. And that's exactly what the attacker does. They liquidate all these troves which are using Alliance block token as collateral. And as a result, they're able to steal all this Alliance block token collateral from the protocol. And how did the attacker actually liquidate these troves? Well, they used a small fraction of this 100 million Bonk Euro tokens which they got in the first transaction. So at the end of the second transaction here, they still have a good portion of this 100 million Bonk Euro tokens left, and they have also accumulated about 113 million Alliance block tokens. Now, about 30 minutes after the hack occurred, a user started reporting on Bonk's Telegram that their troves had disappeared. But this was actually because the troves had been liquidated by the attacker. A few hours after the exploit, the Bonk team paused the protocol to stop another exploit like this from happening. The next day, the Bonk team repaid all debt on existing troves, which allowed the remaining collateral within the protocol to be withdrawn. So this would have been all the collateral besides that Alliance block token, which was stolen. And then the Bonk team also withdrew liquidity from some swap pools, which included the Bonk Euro token. The reason they did this is because the attacker had accumulated a massive amount of Bonk Euro tokens, and so these swap pools would have been susceptible to being drained by the attacker. Also, since so much of the Alliance block token had been stolen, the Alliance block team decided to deploy a new token. This was called the NXRA token, and it was distributed to previous holders of the Alliance block token based on a snapshot taken immediately before the hack. Now, the way to prevent hacks like this in the future would be to use a price from teller which has had sufficient time to be disputed. And in this case, we used a price which had been reported in the same block or the same transaction and didn't have an opportunity to be disputed. The disputer needs time to confirm that the price is actually wrong and then to actually make the dispute. Interestingly enough, a very large protocol suffered from this very same bug. So Liquidity is the protocol I'm talking about, and it's a very large protocol which has about 700 million in TVL. Fortunately, Liquidity was alerted about this bug last year by an independent developer, and they were able to take steps to mitigate any potential effects of this bug. Now, the Alliance block token itself has low liquidity, and so there's a question here about whether the Alliance block token was suitable as a collateral asset. Generally speaking, it's better not to have collateral assets which have low liquidity. This is because tokens with low liquidity can have their prices easily manipulated. So it may not have been a good idea to have the Alliance block token here as collateral in the first place. Also, the Bonq team had the first version of their protocol audited. That being said, significant changes have been made to the protocol since the audit, and that included the teller price feed integration. And so, generally speaking, when protocols have a significant update or significant components added, it's good to get an audit just in case there are any vulnerabilities that have been introduced in this new code. And as we mentioned, there were 2 hack transactions, and there were actually 2 minutes between these 2 hack transactions. So there's a potential here of if the protocol was paused immediately after that first hack transaction, then the second hack transaction, which resulted in the stolen collateral, would have been prevented. Now, this would have required a very fast response from the team because there were only 2 minutes between these 2 hack transactions. Also, the Alliance block token had a pause function on the token contract. And so potentially calling this pause function sooner may have mitigated some damage as well. The second hack we're going to talk about happened on the Platypus protocol. Now, Platypus features its very own stablecoin called USP. And we can see here that in February, the USP stablecoin had a very significant depeg. Now, Platypus is a stable swap DEX which is deployed on Avalanche. And the way Platypus works, if you're an LP, is that you would deposit your stable coins into Platypus. Then Platypus would give you some LP tokens in return. You're then able to stake those LP tokens in Platypus, and you're able to then use those stake tokens as collateral to take out a loan in the form of USP. USP, once again, is the stablecoin of the Platypus protocol. Now, on February 16th, the protocol was hacked for about $8.5 million worth of assets. And the USP stablecoin had a very significant depeg, as we saw in the previous slide. The root cause of this hack had everything to do with the emergency withdrawal functionality. In order to explain this, let's try to walk through a normal withdrawal flow for a liquidity provider. So let's say I'm a liquidity provider and I've deposited some stablecoins into Platypus. So Platypus gives me some LP tokens for depositing these stablecoins, and then I stake these LP tokens to be used as collateral for another loan I want to take out. And I take out this loan in USP, and I try to take out the maximum amount of USP I'm allowed to borrow. So let's say that I try to withdraw all my collateral in this case without repaying my loan. So what should happen in this case is I should not be able to do that. I should not be able to withdraw all my collateral because then I would have an uncollateralized loan, and then I would have no incentive to pay back that loan. So let's take a look at what happens if I tried to withdraw all my collateral in this case. So within the normal withdrawal, the first thing that happens is that the amount of collateral I'm trying to withdraw is deducted from the protocol. So that's the first step over here. Then my position health is checked by Platypus. And what Platypus is doing in this check is that it is checking whether my outstanding debt is covered by my remaining collateral. And since in this case I'm trying to withdraw all my collateral, there would be no remaining collateral left in the protocol for me. And so because of that, I would have an outstanding loan with no collateral supporting it. So my position health would be bad, and so this check is going to fail. Uh, as a result of that, the whole transaction here is going to revert. Let's take a look at what happens if we do the same thing with an emergency withdrawal. In the emergency withdrawal, first the position health is checked. And currently my position is healthy because I still have my staked LP tokens in the protocol which are supporting my USP loan over here. So my position health is good, and this check over here passes. Next, I'm able to withdraw all my collateral, and then the transaction is successful. So essentially what I've done here is I've withdrawn all my collateral without paying back my loan, and now I have an uncollateralized loan, which I have no incentive to pay back. And so this is what the attacker used in order to carry out the exploit. The hack happened in one transaction, and the first step of this transaction was that the attacker took a flash loan of 44 million USDC. All of this 44 million USDC was then deposited into the Platypus protocol, and as a result, the attacker received some LP tokens. The attacker then staked all of these LP tokens to be used as collateral for a large loan. Then in step 3, they're going to take this loan, which is approximately 42 million USP. USP, once again, is Platypus's stablecoin. At this point, everything is okay because this loan that the attacker has taken out is actually collateralized by the staked LP tokens. However, everything changes in step 4, where the attacker performs an emergency withdrawal. So when they perform the emergency withdrawal, the attacker is going to withdraw all their staked LP tokens without paying back their loan. So at this point, the hacker has their collateral in their possession, as well as the loan in their possession. So there's no incentive for the hacker to pay back their loan at this point. The next step is that the hacker redeemed these LP tokens for the original 44 million USDC. So at this point, the hacker has both this 44 million USDC as well as this 42 million USP. And so now the hacker has both the original collateral as well as their loan. And this 44 million USDC is going to be used to pay back that flash loan over here. And so in order to make their profit, the hacker is going to now swap this 42 million USP for various other stablecoins using the Platypus protocol. And whatever stablecoins they get back, that's going to be the hacker's profit in this case. Now, the aftermath of this hack was actually quite interesting. Not even 12 hours after the hack occurred, the hacker was actually doxxed by ZachXBT because of an ENS name association that was found. So the account that was used to fund the attack contract had some type of association with the hacker's ENS name, and ZachXBT was able to find this. Another really exciting event that happened here was a security firm was actually able to rescue a significant portion of the funds from the attack contract. And they were able to do this because the attacker did not secure the flash loan callback function within the attack contract. Also, a Binance wallet was used to fund the attack contract, and all Binance wallets are KYC'd. So by cooperating with Binance, Platypus was able to gain even more information about the hacker's identity. And just over a week after the hack happened, 2 suspects were arrested by the French police in relation to this hack. Also, about $6 million worth of funds still remain locked in the attack contract, and it appears that there's no way to extract these funds at the moment. Also, the Platypus protocol was able to compensate the LPs with about 52% of the funds they lost. Another way that Platypus recovered some of the hacked funds was through an Aave governance proposal. So what happened during the hack was that the hacker accidentally sent some funds to an Aave contract, and Platypus raised a governance proposal for Aave to reclaim these funds. And the Aave community actually supported this proposal, and so Platypus was able to recover these funds from the Aave contract as well. The way to prevent this type of exploit in a lending protocol is to always check the position health when users are withdrawing the collateral after deducting the amount of collateral being withdrawn. So in this case, with the emergency withdrawal, the position health was checked before deducting the amount of collateral which to be withdrawn. Another way to prevent the hack would be to introduce a minimum time between the staking and unstaking of LP tokens. In this hack transaction, LP tokens were staked and unstaked in the same transaction, so there was no time between those operations. And so introducing this staking cooldown time period would have mitigated or prevented this hack entirely as well. Also, it's a good idea to be extra cautious with the emergency withdrawal or emergency functions in general, as these functions have a bad history in Web3. So several protocols have had bugs in their emergency withdrawal functions, including SushiSwap. And so it's best to test these functions very thoroughly. Also, the Platypus protocol had been audited originally. However, significant changes were made to the protocol since the audit, and the vulnerable components of the code had been introduced after the audit. And so when significant changes are made to a protocol, it's a good idea to get them audited just in case a vulnerability has been introduced. Let's move on to the third largest hack in February, which was on the DForce protocol. You can see that DForce's TVL was approximately 56 million on February 8th. However, by the end of February, the TVL had dropped to around 43 million. Now, DForce is a multi-chain ecosystem of protocols. It includes both a lending protocol as well as an aggregator protocol. We're going to be focusing more on the lending protocol because that's the one which was exploited. Now, DForce is originally a compound fork, and one way it differentiates itself from Compound is that it offers different interest rate models based on the asset being borrowed. Also, DForce features its own stablecoin called USX, and users are able to borrow USX from the DForce protocol by first depositing some collateral into the protocol. Now, on February 8th, DForce introduced or launched two different vaults, or one vault on two different chains. So the two chains here are Arbitrum and Optimism. And this new vault enabled the use of a new collateral token, which was the Curve LP token corresponding to the ETH and WST ETH curve pool. Now, just one day after this vault was launched, the protocol was hacked for a total of 3.65 million, and this hack happened on both Arbitrum and Optimism. The root cause of this hack was a read-only reentrancy vulnerability. And this read-only reentrancy vulnerability is related to how liquidity is removed from Curve. So we're showing two main steps here in the removal of liquidity from Curve for that Curve pool. The first step here is that the underlying pool tokens, ETH and WST ETH, are removed or withdrawn to whoever is removing the liquidity. In this case, we have the attack contract removing liquidity, so these underlying pool tokens are sent back to the attack contract. The next step here is that the LP tokens are burned. Now, it's important to note that there is a function on the Curve pool called getVirtualPrice. And this getVirtualPrice function is used by many protocols to calculate the fair price of a Curve LP token. And this function depends on the number of underlying tokens within the pool. In this case, the underlying tokens are ETH and WST ETH. And the function also depends on the total supply of LP tokens. And so in this transaction over here, for part of it, there is an imbalance between the amount of LP tokens, the total supply of LP tokens, as well as the underlying tokens within the pool. And this is because here between these two white vertical lines, the underlying tokens have been returned to the user or the attack contract in this case, but the LP tokens have not yet been burned. So there is an imbalance between the total supply of LP tokens and the number of underlying pool tokens within the pool. And because of this, between these two lines here, get virtual price is returning a smaller value. In fact, in this case, it's returning a much smaller value than it really should. And the attacker was able to take advantage of this. What happened here was that when the ETH was withdrawn to the attack contract's fallback function was invoked. And the fallback function attempted liquidation on some healthy positions in DForce. And at this point, DForce has to decide whether these positions can be liquidated or not. And to do that, DForce has to first calculate the collateral value for each of these positions. Now, these positions were actually collateralized by the Curve LP token. And so in order to find the price of the Curve LP token, DForce has to call this getVirtualPrice function. In this case, getVirtualPrice is returning a much smaller price than it should, and so DForce thinks that these positions are under-collateralized because it seems as if these Curve LP tokens are worth less than they really are. And because of this, DForce allows the liquidation to happen and allows the attacker essentially to steal the collateral of the users. The hack occurred in one transaction. The first step of the hack here was that the attacker took a flash loan from multiple sources, including Aave, Balancer, and Uniswap. So in this, by taking all these flash loans, they were able to accumulate a large amount of wrapped ether. They then took all this wrapped ether and deposited it into the Curve pool. And so the Curve pool would have given them back a lot of LP tokens when they did that. Now, a small fraction of these LP tokens were added into DForce to be used as collateral. And then in this fourth step, the attacker took a loan out against the collateral, this LP token collateral that they added over here. They took a loan out of approximately 2 million USX. USX, once again, is DForce's stablecoin. So this loan is okay so far because currently it is collateralized by these LP tokens. However, things start to go wrong in step 5. In step 5, the attacker tries to remove liquidity from Curve by redeeming their remaining LP tokens. And when this happens, before the removal of liquidity is completed, the fallback function on the attack contract is invoked. And this fallback function is going to try to liquidate healthy positions on DForce. And DForce is going to allow this because these positions appear to be unhealthy because they're collateralized by that Curve LP token. And currently, DForce is relying on that Curve pool's getVirtualPrice function in order to determine the price. And since that getVirtualPrice function is returning a lower price, DForce now thinks that the collateral is worth very little. So it allows the attacker to liquidate all these positions and allows the attacker to essentially to steal the collateral of the users. Now here's a hack which happened in January on the Midas protocol. And this diagram probably looks quite similar to the one we saw a couple of slides back. In this case, the attack was caused by another read-only reentrancy vulnerability in a very similar Curve pool. However, in this case, the hack happened on Polygon, so we're dealing with Matic and staked Matic instead of ETH and wrapped staked ETH. And another difference here is that the LP tokens are burned first, then the underlying pool tokens are withdrawn. So because of the reversal of order here, this time getVirtualPrice is actually returning an inflated price. If you remember from the DForce hack, getVirtualPrice was actually returning a smaller price. But because of the reversal of operations here, this time getVirtualPrice is returning a much higher price than it should. And so this allows the attacker to take a massive loan from Midas, and Midas allows this loan even though it's much greater than the collateral value because it thinks that the collateral in the form of these LP tokens is much more valuable than it really is. And this is primarily due to reading the price from this getVirtualPrice function over here. Now, shortly after the hack happened, the team paused all the vaults in the protocol to prevent the exploit from reoccurring. A security firm was also contacted to track down the hacker as well as determine the root cause of the hack. Now, an on-chain message was sent to the hacker asking them to return the funds in exchange for a bug bounty. However, the attacker had not responded in 24 hours. And so a second on-chain message was sent to the hacker one which was a bit more threatening. And this message told the hacker that the DForce team had discovered critical information about the hacker, including their IP address and device information. And just 2 days after this on chain message was sent, the hacker returned all the funds that were stolen to the DForce protocol in exchange for a bug bounty, as well as in exchange for for the DForce team dropping law enforcement actions against them. So it's very likely that what happened in this case is that the hacker leaked critical information about themselves during the hack, and so the DForce team was able to pressure the hacker into returning these funds. Now, this vulnerability of Curve LP tokens has been known since April of 2022. And in fact, I should say that this vulnerability is not only present with Curve LP tokens, but also LP tokens of comparable protocols. Now, the most commonly used fix for this is to call a cheap state-changing function with a reentrancy guard on the Curve pool before you call the getVirtualPrice function. So this protects you from the reentrancy, because if we were reentering the curve pool when calling that getVirtualPrice function, well, that cheap state changing function with the reentrancy guard would fail due to this reentrancy guard. Also, whenever a new collateral token is incorporated into a lending protocol, there should be a very careful process for deciding whether to add this collateral token or not. Now, in the case of DForce, if you look at their documentation site, they actually do document many different risks associated with the collateral tokens, and they even document different categories of risks. However, it seems they may not have been aware of this vulnerability. And so one step that can really help in this process of deciding whether to incorporate a new collateral token is to consult a security or an audit firm to decide whether this collateral can truly safely be incorporated into the protocol, and if so, how can it safely be incorporated into the protocol. Another way to mitigate the damage from hacks which result from newly added collateral tokens is to place some limits on that collateral token within the protocol. So for example, you could place a limit on how much collateral token can be supplied to the protocol. The fourth largest hack in February happened on the Orion protocol. Orion is a decentralized platform that combines liquidity from centralized exchanges, decentralized exchanges, as well as its very own swap pools. And the main feature of Orion is that it allows users to get the best prices for their trades without needing to interact with several exchanges directly. Now, Orion also has some features of a DEX itself, because it allows projects to list any tokens via custom Orion pools. And on February 2nd, the protocol was exploited and suffered a loss of about $3 million worth of assets due to a reentrancy bug. Now, in order to explain how the Orion hack happened, we first have to look at how Orion normally works. So let's suppose that I'm a user of the Orion protocol and I want to swap my USDC for USDT. So in order to do this, I would call this function on the Orion exchange called swap through Orion pool. The first thing this function does is it takes a snapshot of the output token. The output token in this case is USDT because I'm swapping USDC for USDT. And so the balance of USDT within the exchange contract is recorded here through this snapshot. Then USDC is taken from my wallet, swapped for some intermediate token here, and then the intermediate token is swapped for USDT. Then a second snapshot is taken of USDT within the contract, within the exchange contract. And then the difference between the second snapshot and the first snapshot is what is returned back to me as the user. In this case, it would be about 0.2 USDT. Now, you can probably imagine if someone tampered with the balance of USDT somewhere in the middle of the swap over here, then I might receive far less USDT tokens than I should receive, or I might receive actually far more than I should get. And this is exactly what happened during the hack. Now, to perform this hack, the attacker first deployed a custom attack token to be used as a swap intermediary. Now, this attack token was written in such a way that when attack tokens are transferred, control is returned to the attack contract. And so let's look at how the attacker used this to their advantage. So the attacker started by performing or calling the swap function, swap through Orion pool, to swap USDC to USDT. So first, a snapshot is taken of the USDT balance of the exchange contract. Then the USDC provided by the hacker is swapped for the attack token. And when the attack tokens are transferred, control is returned to the attack contract. And the attack contract is going to take a flash loan of USDT, and then it's going to call another function on the Orion exchange contract. And this function is the deposit function, and it allows the attacker to deposit all the USDT they took from the flash loan into the Orion exchange contract. As a result of this, the balance of the exchange contract of USDT is going to go much higher. And so going back to the normal swap flow over here, the attack token is swapped for USDT, and then the second snapshot of USDT of the balance of USDT is taken. And this time, the balance of USDT is much higher than we expect. And so because of that, the difference between this second snapshot and the first snapshot is going to be much higher than it should be. And this difference is going to be returned to the hacker. The hacker is able to use this to repay the flash loan, and then they're able to withdraw whatever they deposited over here to essentially claim their profit. Now let's review the steps of this hack. So the first step over here was that the attacker created a fake attack token, which was written in such a way that it had a transfer hook. And whenever a transfer of the attack token happened, control was returned back to the attack contract. The second step here was that the attacker added two liquidity pairs in Orion. So this would have been one pair for USDC and attack token, and one pair for attack token and USDT. So this allowed the attack token to be used as a swap intermediary. So essentially, the USDC was swapped for attack token, and then the attack token was swapped for USDT. Then the attack contract took a flash loan of USDT. After this, they initiated a small swap in Orion, which would go from USDC to USDT. Now, in the middle of this swap operation, the attack contract is given control because of that attack token transfer. And what the attack contract does is it deposits the USDT taken from the flash loan into the Orion exchange. And so now the swap completes, but when the swap ends, a much higher amount of USDT is sent to the hacker than the amount that actually should be sent. Then the attacker is able to withdraw the USDT that they deposited over here in the middle of the swap. And so they're able to repay the flash loan and still have a profit of the same amount that they borrowed from the flash loan. Now this exploit happened on two different chains. One was the Binance Smart Chain and the other was Ethereum. And the Binance Smart Chain exploit happened first, and 16 minutes later, the Ethereum exploit happened. About 30 minutes after the original exploit, the exploit was reported on Twitter. And about 1 hour after the hack happened, users started inquiring in the Discord channel about whether an exploit has happened or not. Now, the team paused the deposit function to prevent the hack from reoccurring, and they also posted an official response about 6 hours after the hack. Now, in this case, the hack was possible because of a reentrancy vulnerability, and the easiest way to prevent this reentrancy vulnerability would be to add a reentrancy guard. In fact, if we were to add a reentrancy guard to the swap function as well as the deposit function, then this hack would have been prevented. And this would be because it would not be possible to call that deposit function without first completing the execution of that swap function. Another pattern that can prevent many reentrancy bugs is the checks effects interactions pattern. And so following this within your code can prevent many types of reentrancy exploits. It may not have helped in this case due to the nature of that transfer hooks used in the attack token, but it will prevent many other reentrancy vulnerabilities. Also, better monitoring and faster alerting may have helped to mitigate this hack. So we know that there was 16 minutes between the Binance Smart Chain exploit and then the Ethereum exploit. And so potentially if the Ethereum protocol was paused immediately after the BSC hack happened, then the Ethereum hack would have been prevented. And so this could have prevented a considerable amount of damage to the protocol. Let's move on to the fifth largest hack in February, which happened on the Dexible protocol. Now, Dexible has done about 430 million in trades, in volume of trades, and unfortunately, due to this hack, it seems they may not be able to continue operations. Dexible is a multi-chain DEX aggregator deployed on Ethereum, Arbitrum, Optimism, and several other chains. The main feature of Dexible is that it offers many different types of advanced orders, including stop limit orders, trailing stop orders, time-weighted orders, and many others. Version 2 of Dexible was deployed on February 17th, on February 16th, and just one day later, on February 17th, $2 million worth of assets was stolen from users' wallets. So this 2 million was not stolen directly from the protocol contracts, but directly from the users' wallets. And about 1.5 million of this 2 million actually belonged to Block Tower Capital, which happened to be Dexible's main investor. In order to explain the hack on Dexible, we first need to explain how Dexible normally works. And so here is the normal flow for Dexible. Let's suppose that a user wants to swap USDC to USDT using Dexible. And so Dexible is a DEX aggregator, which means it's going to perform a swap on a DEX on behalf of the user. And so in this case, the user is going to call a swap function on Dexible. Dexible is going to take the USDC from the user and transfer it to Dexible. Dexible is then going to call a swap function on some DEX, which might be Uniswap, SushiSwap, or any other DEX. And so this DEX is going to transfer the USDC tokens from Dexible to the DEX, and then it will swap that USDC for USDT and return the USDT to Dexible. Dexible will then forward the USDT back to the user. Now, it's important to consider that in this flow, the user is actually the one that provides the DEX address. And so the user could provide the address of like different DEXs, including Uniswap or SushiSwap or any other DEX. Also, the user provides the function that is called on the DEX. So this swap function, for example, is actually provided by the user. So what the hacker did is they did not provide a DEX address. They provided a token address, and they did not provide a swap function. They provided a transfer from function. And now, as with most DeFi protocols, Dexible requires its users to approve Dexible to spend tokens on their behalf. And so at the time of the hack, users had active approvals pending for Dexible. And the hacker was able to use this to their advantage. Essentially, what happened here was the hacker called the swap function on Dexible, but rather than calling a swap function on a DEX, Dexible called the transfer from function on a token contract that was specified by the hacker. And so this resulted in this token being transferred from the user to the hacker directly. And that's why the tokens appeared to disappear from the user's wallet. So essentially what happened here is that the hacker was able to manipulate Dexible into transferring its users' tokens to the hacker directly. Here is part of the input for the swap function in Dexible. So this router parameter over here should normally be set to a DEX router, such as the Uniswap router. However, the attacker set this to a token address. Also, this router data parameter over here is meant to be set to a swap function. However, the attacker set it to this transfer from call. The hack actually consisted of several similar transactions which occurred over 30 minutes. And there were several transactions because There were different transactions for different users that were stolen from, and different tokens which were stolen from the users. And the Dexible team paused the contract about 40 minutes after the hack. They then analyzed what happened and published a postmortem about 12 hours after the hack. At this point, the Dexible team was not in a good situation, and they decided not to expend further company funds. So they decided not to expend funds tracking the hacker because the chances of recovering the funds were very low. They also stopped paying themselves a salary so they could maximize the amount of refunds they could provide to the users. Now, the remaining funds held by the company were distributed pro rata to the impacted users. And the remaining funds was just this 134K over here. And basically, they were distributed proportionally to how much each user lost. And since Block Tower Capital lost the most funds, they would have gotten most of this 134K. The company behind Dexible is now seeking acquisition interest. And if they don't find any, they have mentioned on their Discord channel that they will actually have to shut down. And so this would be quite a tragic consequence of this hack. Now, the Dexible hack was not the only one of its kind in February. In fact, at least four aggregator protocols were hacked in February. And many of the hacks were very similar to this Dexible hack. So any protocol which allows the user to specify a function which the protocol is going to call on an external contract needs to validate which contract is being called and also the call data for that call. Now, the original version of Dexible was audited. However, version 2 of the protocol, which was deployed in February, had not been audited. And so when significant updates to a protocol have been made, it's usually a good idea to get them audited in case new vulnerabilities have been introduced. Also, as we mentioned before, the hack happened over multiple transactions which occurred basically over a time period of 30 minutes or so. So if the contracts were paused within that 30 minutes, some of the hack transactions would have been blocked and some of the funds would have been saved. Let's go over some of the smaller exploits which happened in February. So first up, we have Hope Finance. And Hope Finance was deployed on Arbitrum, and it saw about 1.8 million lost due to a rug pull. And one of the malicious transactions was actually approved by all three owners of the protocol's multisig. Next up, we have the Dungeon Swap and Launch Zone protocols deployed on Binance Smart Chain. And these hacks saw about 1.46 million lost. Now, these hacks were primarily due to insufficient access control. And in the case of the Dungeon Swap protocol, there was also price manipulation of the DND token. So the price of the DND token was inflated, and the attacker was able to sell the DND token at those elevated prices. Next, we have SpareX, which is deployed on Arbitrum and is a stablecoin protocol. Now, the root cause of this hack was a rebase calculation error within the token transfer function. Then we have FEG deployed on the Binance Smart Chain, which saw about 283K lost. In this case, the root cause of the hack was missing input validations on functions for the addition of liquidity. And this led to the unauthorized minting of LP tokens, which were then used to steal funds. Then we have CowSwap, which is an aggregator protocol in Ethereum. This bug or this hack was very similar to the one which happened on Dexible, and it was primarily because the user was allowed to make the protocol make these arbitrary calls to external contracts. Then we have Aqua DAO, which is deployed on the Juno chain, which is part of the Cosmos ecosystem. In this case, we had an operational issue where not enough tokens were staked to secure the governance. And so the hacker was able to stake more tokens to take control of the governance and steal these funds. Then we have the Bevo token on the Binance Smart Chain, which is a deflationary token, and it has some functions which allow the attacker to manipulate the balance of the Bevo token in the PancakeSwap pool. This combined with the skim function on PancakeSwap allowed the attacker to drain the PancakeSwap pool of liquidity. Next, we have another aggregator protocol, which is Revert Finance. And in this case, the hack was very similar to Dexible as well. SushiSwap also saw about 26K lost on Ethereum due to the use of stale stored prices, and a very similar exploit happened in December of 2022. Next, we have Dynamic Finance on the Binance Smart Chain. In the case of Dynamic Finance, there was some flawed rewards logic, which led to the attacker claiming excessive rewards. This was actually a big trend in February, where many of the smaller hacks were as a result of mistakes in the rewards logic. Finally, we have the Degen Millionaires Club on the Binance Smart Chain, which was deployed with an unprotected minting function on the token contract. So this allowed the hacker to mint the tokens to the PancakeSwap pool, and then in combination with that skim function on PancakeSwap, the hacker was able to drain the PancakeSwap pool of liquidity. There were also several private key compromises in February. The biggest one was on MyAlgo wallet on the Algorand chain, and this saw at least $9.2 million worth of funds lost to users. And thousands of users were impacted in this case, and one notable example is the company wallet of AlgoDex, which was compromised, and the funds in this wallet were lost. Then we have LeonGo, and in this case, LeonGo, which is deployed on the Binance Smart Chain, had the liquidity pool owner's private key compromised, and the pool was made to reference a fake LP token. Then the attacker was able to mint a lot of this fake LP token and use it to drain the pool of liquidity. Lastly, we have Shredded Apes, which is an NFT project on Solana, and in this case, we had a compromise of a wallet holding royalties, as well as the protocol token called Way. Let's talk about some of the trends we've seen from the hacks in February. 3 of the 5 largest hacks could have been mitigated with a faster response. So this includes Bonq, Orion, as well as Dexible. And this just shows us that Web3 is in need of better monitoring solutions, which can help these teams to be alerted faster and respond more rapidly to these hacks, and potentially mitigate the damage of these hacks with the faster responses. Now, out of the 5 largest hacks, 2 had a significant amount of funds recovered as well. And this would be DForce as well as Platypus. In the case of DForce, all the funds were recovered as the hacker returned all the funds. And in the case of Platypus, a security firm was able to rescue a significant portion of funds from the attack contract and send it to the Platypus team. Another way Platypus was able to recover some funds was that they passed a Aave governance proposal, which allowed them to recover some funds which the hacker had sent to an Aave contract. Also, the DForce and Platypus teams discovered quite a bit of critical information about the hacker. In the case of DForce, they had sufficient information about the hacker to pressure them into returning the hacked funds. And in the case of Platypus, the team was able to discover enough information about the hacker such that just 1 week after the hack happened, 2 suspects were arrested by the French police in relation to this hack. Now, all 5 of the largest hacks were responded to by their teams by pausing the protocol. So pausing the protocol remains the go-to action after a hack and is the primary way for protocols to prevent further damage after a hack has happened. Another big trend we saw in February was the hacking of aggregators. And at least 4 aggregators were hacked in February, including Orion, Dexible, CowSwap, and Revert Finance. If you count DForce as well, that would be 5. And these hacks were primarily caused by a lack of validation. However, in the case of Orion, the hack was caused by the assumption made about the atomicity of the swap operation. And this assumption was violated through the reentrancy through that deposit function. In the case of Dexible, CowSwap, and Revert Finance, the users were able to manipulate the protocols into making arbitrary function calls to external contracts. Another trend we've seen in February is that most of the hacked protocols were not fully audited. And many of these protocols had been audited initially, or the initial version of the protocol had been audited, but the second version of the protocol or certain significant updates to the protocol had not been audited. And generally, the vulnerable code was in these newly added components to the protocol. Also, we saw a couple of protocols add perhaps an inappropriate collateral or incorporate a collateral in a vulnerable way. And so perhaps as part of the process of incorporating a new collateral into a lending protocol, the team should consult with a security team in order to determine whether the collateral token can be safely incorporated into the lending protocol, and how it can be safely incorporated into that protocol. Here are a few other trends we've seen in February. Three of the largest 5 hacks were facilitated by flash loans. Also, we saw quite a bit of price manipulation in many of the hacks, including Platypus, Bonq, and DForce. Also, we saw the exploitation of emergency or recovery functions. So this was most notable in the Platypus hack, where the emergency withdraw function was exploited. And in the case of the Bevo token, as well as the Degen Millionaires Club, the skim function in PancakeSwap was used to facilitate the hack. We also noticed that at least 4 protocols which had their own stablecoins were hacked. This brings us to the end of February. Thanks so much for joining us for the February Hacks Roundup. And here's a small preview for the March Hacks Roundup. Next month, we're going to cover the Euler Finance exploit in detail, as well as the Bonq DAO hack and more. Also, we'll show you a hack which required no solidity at all and simply required the use of Google Sheets. Thank you once again for joining us, and for more security content, check out our Twitter at Quantstamp and our YouTube channel at Quantstamp HQ.